Hey everyone, we're just waiting for 5 minutes for people to trickle in. We see there are about 15 to 20 people on the YouTube live stream and a few various other streams on Facebook Live and Twitter. So we're just going to wait for 5 minutes and then start off. Okay, let's begin, guys. Thanks for waiting. We have quite a few people now. Hi, everybody, and good evening, and welcome to the first edition of Copo Jam. And we just like to start by saying that we're absolutely glad that we've got an equally good response from the tech and creative communities both. And this was a fairly unfamiliar concept of code poetry, and we did get a great response from everybody. We're super excited to have you all join us live on various streams that are on right now. Copo Jam is our first attempt to bring tech and art together to see the kind of creative possibilities that lie at this intersection. And in the process, develop a new category of creators. Okay, let's begin, guys. Thanks for waiting. We have quite a few people now. Sorry, there was a. Hi, everybody. I have a YouTube live on also, so that was. Okay, so this is our attempt to develop a new category of creators as well. And through CopoJam and the overall umbrella of Draft, we want to instigate programmers and techies to explore creative use of coding and to make art for creative expression through this format, and also inspire designers, artists, and other creators to use technology to augment their art, what they're doing right now, to make for exciting experiences. Now, to introduce the host of this event, I am Nanditi. I form 50% of Ajaib Ghar, which is one of the organizers. The other 50% of Ajaib Ghar is Ambika, who you'll see at the end of the jam. We have Dooby Dooby Dooby, who is also commonly known as Agat. He will be moderating the jam this evening for us. A huge shout out to the very nice folks at Hasgeek who have set up all the streams for us and who have been extremely patient with us while we did tech chest for like an hours altogether, and they've been super supportive in general for everything. We hope all of you have a seamless experience as far as the tech goes, but sometimes machines also can get moody. So if there is a tech glitch, then we're just going to say that this is called draft and it is expected behavior. So let's just embrace the glitch. So let's get started with this and over to Agat.
Okay, thank you, Nanditi, and thanks everyone for coming. So this is the first Copo Jam, Code Poetry Jam, and Copo Jam is part of Draft, is what Nanditi has already told us. And Draft is an attempt to understand how text is going to change in the future. So one of the things that Draft is trying to do is understand intersections of text and technology, and understand how widely text influences our life. So in fact, when we started working on this, we realized that text is everywhere. It is in fact an all-inclusive category. Hold on, yeah, yeah, can you, is this okay now? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I was saying that how when we started to think about Draft, and we realized that text is such an all-inclusive category that there's almost everything comes inside text, and therefore it's so powerful. And we thought that it'll be interesting to understand how text will change in the future. When the lockdown started and COVID kind of took over our world, we were planning to set up a small festival in Jaipur, and well, because of the lockdown and because of how things have panned out, we kind of changed course a little bit and thought it'd be nice to meet multiple times through smaller events till the time we all can get together in person and do something big with Draft. So that's how Copo Jam was born. Some of us were interested in poetry. Some of us were interested in code. Some of us were interested in how both these things intersect with each other. And I think one of the evenings when we were thinking how to, what to do now, sort of we were, Nanditi kind of suggested that why don't we do a poetry jam, but try and see what technology can do in the mix. And Copo Jam was born. And after that, when we spoke to everybody in the community, everybody was extremely fascinated that what is this and what could this be? So what happened as we started to think about Copo Jam was that we went out thinking of syntax poetry, which is a very specific category, but it very quickly expanded. We were very, very encouraged by the kind of responses we got and the discussions we had with everybody, and everybody told us, yes, but why can't this be poetry and why can't that be poetry? So we ended up expanding the definition of poetry a lot, and that kind of helped us in opening our eyes and sort of widening our horizon of what code poetry can be. What we're exploring today are also some very, very interesting and very varied kind of diverse forms of code poetry. We have blackout poetry. We also have sentiment analysis in the context of literature. We also have something on speculative literature, speculative fiction, and generative texts and things like that. We also have sound getting converted to words and those kind of translations as well. The idea of Copo Jam, the idea of Draft, is to encourage experimentation and is to encourage newer forms, is to encourage people to come together and learn from each other. And it is with that spirit that we have kind of set up this set up this platform. So what we are going to do is we are going to go, we have all our presenters are lined up one after the other, and our questions we'll take questions at the end. But you can keep shooting those questions on wherever you are. If you're on Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, you can keep typing those questions in. And if you want to address any specific panelists, you can write their name in front of that as well. And in the end, we'll take all the questions. And so I hope that is clear. One of our presenters will also would also interact with you through the chat box. So those instructions will come when they have to. What we have lined up today is, as I said, we have just a second. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with one of the youngest presenters here. His name is Jazer, and Jazer is an interaction designer, and he has this kind of this playful itch with code, and he makes experimental interfaces. And so today, Jazer is going to share something with us in the space of blackout poetry. So now I think over to you, Jazer, and I'm going to sort of, shut my video, and so over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Agat. Okay, hi everybody. And before I get into what interface I have today for you, what I'm going to be sharing, the next few minutes, we're going to be dabbling into this realm of blackout poetry. So let me just get onto that. Okay, so blackout poetry is a form of poetry where you take an already existing piece of text and you only select a few words, paint over the rest, and then the selected few words, they form a poem. And to me, when I looked at this visual, it almost, I could sense an interplay of opposition here. Certain words are being on, certain words are being off. And computationally, I can also look at it as certain words being true and certain words being false. So this binary interplay, this interplay of opposites is what the interface is going to explore. And the interesting part here is that the opposition is going to be the person who's there to interact with it, their intuition, their emotional intuition, versus a bot who's going to be functioning on some mechanical randomness. So let's dive into that interface. So this is it. I hope you guys can see my cursor. I made it very bold and very green. And this is a piece of text. And on the left, you can see certain creation modes here. And we're going to go through each of these creation modes. And yeah, look at what poetry we're getting. So this is the first mode, which says thesis, only you select. And this is where only I'm going to work through this. And I'm going to be improvising my way through this. So let's see. And I'll start performing my poetry. So I'm going to be selecting the words. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That is the poem that I want to go for. And from here, I can move on to do the blackout. And this is it. And I'm not going to be reading out this poem myself. To the essence of Copo Jam, I have brought in something interesting, a fun feature that we're going to explore. So let's hear that.
Modern me was from the next routine I could exceed the younger unhappiness.
And that was speech synthesis. So it's interesting here how I have performed the poetry and now this bot.
Modern me was from the next routine I could exceed the younger unhappiness.
This was the first mode. Now we're going to look on to the next mode, and it says antithesis, only the bot selects. Now we have the opportunity to interpret what this bot has to tell us. And there we have a poem. Let's hear it.
Of the next cottage that the little gentleness.
Does that make sense to you guys? I mean,
of the next cottage that the little gentleness.
Maybe. And we're going to move on to the next mode, which says synthesis, where you select and then the bot selects. So now we've entered this collaborative space. And let's see how that feels like. So I'm going to select the first word. It selected night for me. Okay. I'm going to do blackout here now. This is what the poetry looks like. Let's hear it.
Modern night to discover the sun, the man within every gentleness, for I was.
And it's interesting here, this experience is almost competitive also in nature, because there's I'm thoughtfully trying to select words here and the computer is literally just throwing a word at me. So that's something interesting to explore in this mode. The next mode is called symbiosis, which says you select and that the bot suggests. We're going to try that now. So I'm going to select it has select, and now it's giving me some suggestions. So the suggestions for me are gentle, night, coarse, same. I selected night. Now the selections are hovel, before, coarse, for. And this was me and computer collaborating in some sense. This is the poem.
The night before youth that the blind love and cause.
Let's hear that again.
The night before youth that the blind love and cause.
I don't know. I mean, to me, these poems make some sense, but I'm really wondering what you guys are thinking, whether this is making sense to you or not. Now there's the last mode that we can explore. It's called visual, and it says only the bot draws a wave. And when you click here, you can see some sort of pattern here. And what's happened here is that if you look at all these creation modes, the first one, these creation modes are coming from that idea of opposites, and opposites, the interplay between them. So the first one is where only one opposite works, which is me. The next one is where only the computer works. Synthesis is where there was such sort of a middle ground between these two opposite ideas. Symbiosis was where these both ideas helped each other in some sense. And they were in many ways dependent on one another. And the last one, visual, is a wild card. Because in this case, I thought, why do we need to go for two opposites? There's human and computer, and they're both working under the rules of language. I still try to create poetry under language. The computer is also trying to perform under language. But this mode is where a new bot comes in, and the bot operates under the rules of visual. So here, if you notice, it's a sine wave that the bot has plotted onto this paragraph and then selected those words.
Or could them course to prepared as I younger gentleness his.
I mean, that makes more sense somehow.
Or could them course to prepared as I younger gentleness his.
And that was pretty much the interface, and it'll be really interesting once this is out, once this is over to you guys, and see what you're getting from it, what you're experiencing from it. If you want to know more on this project, there's a link here which says, in the context of human-computer dichotomy, know more, and this expands onto that idea of oppositions. And the link to this generator will be shared with you soon, and that is what I had to share with you. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you had a nice time. Over to you, Doobie.
Jazer, I'm very curious how this started. Were you doing blackout poetry? There was an image of you doing something on a newspaper.
That's correct, but that's not me.
So how did it start for you? Oh yeah, that's not you. How did it start for you?
This project came out. So I'm in my final year of my design education for 4 years. Yeah. And in that we have something called the graduation project.
Right.
So this project came out of that experience of the graduation project. I started by looking at this whole aspect of binaries and opposites. And within that contextual inquiry, certain things folded, unfolded. I decided to explore this realm of language and text. And through that, I discovered blackout poetry. And then this interface came out of that.
Okay. So I've been given some instructions on how that I think I've been told to repeat that if you have, Jason, hang on, I have some more questions for you.
Cool.
So if you have any questions, put a Q in the bracket, put the name of the person you want to ask that question to, and then put your question. If you don't have a specific person in mind, you can leave the bracket blank or not have the bracket at all. So, Jason, I'm very fascinated. So were you, so when you were making this poetry every day, and some poems made sense, or some poems made more sense than the rest, right? So what was your, I mean, what did you think did you get a sense of the kind of poet your bot is? Like, is there a,
so if we go behind the algorithms that are on play here, so the bot is following a simple rule. Like I'm revealing the secret here in some sense. Yeah. The bot is following grammar rules. It just knows, okay, I need to follow a preposition, a determiner, a noun, and these grammar rules have been noticed and analyzed through different poets. So if I try to save this poem, only bot selects, I'll save this. I can look at the name. So for this file, the name says poem by Emily Dickenbot. So the bot that was using the grammar rule by Emily Dickinson. And that's sort of a pun on the name.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Jason. And we've got some questions coming in for you, but we'll take them in the end. Our next presenter is Hugo Pilate. Hugo Pilate is a designer, and he has a very interesting practice, because with every project of his, he seems to be sort of trying to understand something in the world around him. And this project that he'll present here today is a very charming little project, but it's very beautiful. And I mean, the exact details he'll share with you. But I think what I find very fascinating about this project is that it has this childlike curiosity in it, and and it has got really sort of a very simple grace, but yet it's an extremely sort of thought-provoking, and it's very simple. It's very simple looking modality exposes a lot to us. So Hugo, are you there?
Yes, I'm waiting for my video to come on. I think I don't have access just yet, but thank you very much for a very kind introduction, Agat. While that gets started, basically, I just wanted to say a quick word about this, and I'll explain more after we try this kind of performance experience. But basically what I've tried to do is use very rudimentary code, because that's the extent of my knowledge and the extent of my know-how in creative coding, and use our power of perception and interpretation as humans to kind of read between the lines. Okay, so I'll leave it there and
cool.
start sharing my screen.
Yeah, so I'm going to switch my video off. All the best for that.
Thank you. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I'd like to invite you to big questions for small talks. And in this session, I'd like to walk you through a very simple kind of question generator I've created to get us through, all these awkward moments of silence or kind of proximity, intimacy, where you kind of are there and you know the person and you have to make conversation, but that might be a little bit tough. So, once upon a time, this used to be when you were stuck in the elevator on your way to work. And now this might be more, when you're on the conference call, but everyone's muted because it hasn't started yet, right? But so I think we can all kind of put ourselves into that space and into that mindset. And what I'd like for you to do is please join me in this machine-aided exercise of improvisation, right? And what we'll do is basically, there's a kind of question generator in the back. I'll be running through it, seeing what questions I like. And once I choose one, I'll paste it into the chat, and I'd love for you to answer it, right? So any of these questions can be answered by yes or no, but I would love for you to give me a little bit of an explanation as to why you would have put one or the other, right? So if we take a brand new one as an example, do you think intrepid global leaders would ever disappear when prompted to do so? So I might answer, no, because they would never do that. They are too self-absorbed, right? So this is the kind of dynamic I want to develop. We'll do maybe 5, 6 questions. And really the idea is for you to have fun with this. And at the end, I'll collate all the answers from the different feeds, and we'll put it into a nice little kind of digital zine that we're sharing with everyone else. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the chat on my end. Okay, I have it. Great. And I'm going to check for questions. So just wait for me to paste it into the chat. Try another one. This one disappeared, sorry. Okay, let's try this one. Do you think detached trees would ever accumulate junk when on a shopping spree? Okay, so I'm going to paste it here. I hope everyone can see it. Do you think detached trees would ever accumulate junk when on a shopping spree? And now you can go into the chat and answer yes or no. And so I have someone saying yes, as they are separated. Yes, because they have lost their roots. Yet they won't because they carry reusable bags. Very nice. Of course, and they can store them in their trunk. Oh, amazing. Someone has junk in the trunk. No, because they are pretty detached. Maybe. Wow, these are amazing. Okay, great. So a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll wait for one more answer. Okay, great. Oof, okay, so many. But yes, they would decide to put humans in their shopping carts. No, because they would use strong bark lotions. Yes, because they're shopping. There's always junk coming in with that. Beautiful. Okay, so that was perfect. Let me try to find another question. Oh, do you think virtuous global leaders, one sec. Do you think virtuous global leaders would ever interrogate passersby when turned on? Okay, so this is completely open to interpretation. Just to see what comes out of this one. Yes, because what's a virtuous global leader? One could only hope they won't grow up as well. Yes, they should, since they're virtuous. Yeah, they always trying something or the other. Nah, they're too nice for this vice. Wow, nice. I like this one. Okay, great. So maybe I'll just do 2 more, and then I'll tell you just a little bit about how this came to be, and that'll be the end of my session. 1 second. Okay. Okay, do you think, let's leave that one for later. It's too real. Trees we've already talked about. Shopping sprees also. Oh, okay. This one's also quite close to reality, but there's a lot of junk accumulation in shopping sprees today. Any ideas? Is it too close to reality? If so, I can get yes, because it would unfreeze what was prior. Okay. Not unless they plan it. Yes, it'll be their new home. Of course, we are addicted to cold junk. Yes, because they're extraterrestrials. Ooh, nicely done, Ravisha. Okay, great. So last one. Let me just try to see if we can get some newer sentences. Sensual bureaucrats. Sea lions, I think I'll wait on this one. Sea lions again. Okay. Do you think unforgiving entrepreneurs would ever avoid each other when prompted to do so? I'm not sure what they're being unforgiving about or avoiding each other for, but please let me know. It's a tough one. Depends on how much money is involved. Yes. And when not prompted to do so. No, because they would miss out on PR. No, once prompted for profit. Really nice. No, they feed off each other's energy. They wouldn't even need prompting. Okay, so there's one more actually I saw that I kind of liked that has gone by. Oh, there's more coming in. Yes, confrontation is tough for entrepreneurs. Great. Yes, because elephants always. Okay, amazing. Thank you. So I'll do one more. Do you? It was from before, but I've copy and pasted it. Do you think penny pinching athletes would ever choose to change things up when planets collide? And that'll be the last one. Yeah, they're willing to. Ravisha is on fire. Yeah, I agree. Well, maybe we can close on this then. So I'll just quickly tell you about, they're both magnificent bodies. Ah, nice. So feel free to keep dropping them in. I'm just going to show you a little bit about what this is about and what this is all together. So actually this generator is a very kind of simple structure where I've created a question and left blanks in it, like a Mad Lib exercise for different words to be scrambled within it, right? So if, I'm sure you've noticed by now, but all the questions start with, do you think? Then there's an adjective, a noun. Then it goes to a conditional, would ever. Then there's an action. And when, a situation, right? And through this, I was trying to imitate this kind of candid process of asking questions about the world altogether, right? So even if it ends in a yes or no, you're kind of forced to wonder why that question is being asked, right? And so this is a kind of riff off of an existing project that I had, and I've written about it on Medium a little bit. But so this was meant more for the corporate sector. I'm a design researcher and design strategist. And so I run a lot of co-creation workshops where you get, 20, 40 people in a room and you have them come up with ideas. But you realize that, a lot of these ideas are fairly easy to come up with usually. If you have to come up with something on the spot, it can be tough to kind of come up with a perfect idea on the spot. Not that that's the point. But there's a lot of value when you take all these ideas into a shared structure and then kind of scramble them together, right? And so this was actually first created for a workshop on rethinking the future of female contraception. And since, in this piece, I tell a little bit the story of what it means to kind of run these kinds of workshops. But over time, I've been able to, kind of refine this process and adapt it to a few other spaces. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Unbox, but that's something, we repeated this structure to put it as part of the branding, and it was part of a few different goods that we shared at the Unbox Festival in Bangalore in last Feb. It was used at an exhibit. We used, and when I say we, sorry, I should have mentioned this, but I used to work at Quicksand for the past 3 years, so this is something I developed there. So we used it in an exhibit, and so this is kind of the latest version of these experiments, We've even tried an illustrated one that will load in a second. But so all of these felt very stiff and kind of objective and have a specific intent. And so I was just trying to create one that was a little more poetic. And Ambika was nice enough to kind of reach out and see if we could include it in this session. So that's about it for me. I hope I haven't gone too much over time. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Hugo. I think that was very interesting, and you gave us a little bit of a warm up on the chat window, and now we are all very warmed up to type lots of things in this window, lots of questions. So I want to remind everybody, keep the questions coming. And our next presenter is Preeti. Preeti is an information designer, and she works at the intersection of design, technology, and code. And what she's showing us today is actually a part of that. And I don't want to take the risk of explaining the project. So over to you, Preeti. And yeah.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I'll just set up my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So without further ado, I'll just quickly go over how this project sort of like how this even happened. So back in design school, for my final capstone, I had to sort of bring in everything, all different aspects of who I am. And this project basically combines my understanding and interpretation of Indian vernacular poetry, and as a dancer, as a Bharatanatyam artist, with my interest in expressive typography as a designer and my limited experience of using programming as a creative medium. I guess it was a combination of all of these. I've had a chance to read and analyze few of Indian classical works and reimagine them into dance performances. So sort of drawing parallels and seeing how this graceful amalgamation of space and motion and voice could serve, to express the emotion is what I was trying through this project. And if I had to show some of my inspirations, it's mostly been how does this post-digital era look like? So when you go beyond screens, how do we sort of augment the physical world with digital information? And through this way, how do we sort of reconnect back to space in meaningful and beautiful ways? And a couple of people have already done this and on similar lines. And that would be Kyle and Zach. And some of these people have been, especially Kyle has been kind enough to sort of look into the work and sort of give some response from his side, which I'm sort of grateful about. But overall, I guess the idea was to explore type in this post-digital age, and how do I sort of embody the entire embodying aspect of spatial, interactive, and immersive dimension, and how do I take type into that dimension was the idea. And such works have already been done in the West and East. When I talk about poetry and type, we've had futurist poets, concrete poets, and even Indian poets try and explore type in different ways, through expressive typography and poetry. But yes, how do I bring it to this era, to this time, and how do I see how can it be evolved and adapt to the emerging media and affordances? And there's a plethora of examples there, but owing to time, I'll sort of skip and just show you a couple of interesting works that have been tried and done. And going to, I'm sorry, I guess I extended. Yes, talking about Meghadutam, which is sort of the premise and one of the main essence of my project. Looking back at Indian classical poetry, which holds a lot of profound cultural significance, and it's always been a constant source of inspiration for artists and for creative practitioners. And it's not just Kalidasa, we've got Mirabai, Tulsidas, a lot of them, and just to name a few. And all of the works are charged with rich imagination, which provides the substance that we need for such experiments through specific type. And given that they've stood the test of time, and it also allows you this freedom of artistic interpretation, I've taken Kalidasa's Meghadutam and I've attempted to envision this as an interactive 3-dimensional form that moves through space. Now I'll quickly skip this and go to the actual work. I hope this is audible. Right. So the purpose of this reimagination is to kind of like enhance the emotional journey of the cloud in this particular piece of poetry. So I'll be focusing on the emotional qualities as expressed by the poet and how do I give it like a physical form through type. And I've sort of used motion and interaction here, and I'll just go to it. I'll only be showing a couple of stanzas today.
Preeti, I think, there's no audio coming.
Oh, okay. You're saying there's no audio?
There's no audio, there was only a video. I think that.
Okay. That's weird. So I'm not sure why that's happening.
I think you'll have to. We've done it yesterday. So you'll have to reshare this screen, and then there's an option there to share with audio, I think.
Oh, okay. My bad. Apologies.
No, that's okay. It's just.
Right. So I've just explored like a couple of.
Yeah, I can hear something now. Thanks, Preeti. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Yeah, sure.
Loud as 100 drums beat the thunder's sound. Softer strains, the swelling gale breathes through the canes, where Ganga leads her purifying waves, and the musk deer spring frequent from the caves. Your path retraced, resume your promised flight, when in the east the sun restores the light.
So the idea was to sort of capture the wind's swelling breath, the waves of Ganga, and the cloud's path as it sort of crosses all these landscapes. And it's interactive. So basically, I have the form retained, but I do get to interact with the way the waves move within this three-dimensional space. And yeah, something bad. So this particular stanza just tries to capture, this particular sketch tries to capture the movement of the wind, the cloud, and the water.
Lightened by tasks like these, the day proceeds, but much I dread, a bitterer night succeeds. Her slight form, consumed by ceaseless pain, scarce like the moon hastening to its wane. Disturbed by tears, by those pallid cheeks burn, with visions of her dearer half's return.
So in this sketch, I have like, just looking at the typographic form, I've got like two sort of like tendrils which try and like endlessly meet, but they get like pulled apart again and again. So this sort of captures the yaksha and the yakshi from the poem that are sort of trying to meet but not able to because of wherever they are. I think it's quite relevant to the current scenario. And now I'm like interacting with it. Let's go to the next one.
Trust to futurity, for still we view the always wretched, always blessed are few. Life like a wheel's revolving orb turns around, no whirled in the air, nor dragged along the ground.
This is sort of special to me because one of the main elements of Kalidasa's poetry is the metaphor of a Persian wheel, which sort of keeps revolving and changing form. But what it tries to depict is that what goes around sort of comes around. So the circularity of the shape and the motion that is being used here is trying to convey that metaphor of the wheel of fortune. I guess that's pretty much what I had to show. Just a few stanzas from work. Okay, that's
thanks.
pretty much from my side.
Thanks, Preeti. I think super interesting. So I'm very curious. I want to know that when you were imagining this project, and you also kind of mentioned this in the little write-up that you sent, that there's a mention of space. And what was this imagination of space? Was it designed, or was it imagined for a certain kind of space? And how was it then people would interact with this piece?
Right. It's great that you asked. So yes, this was planned for a space. Actually, the intent was to have this like an installation that people could sort of come and interact with and experience this particular poetry sort of in space and not like, on paper or screen. So that was the initial intent. But also that owing to I was like in final year college, I couldn't really like afford setting up an installation like that. But yes, I would sort of love to. That's something I really want to do. Like take this to like an installation or like a space where I can install this and people could just come and interact with it. And the poetry sort of like the form sort of changes to the way people interact with the actual piece. So that's sort of the idea.
Cool, thank you. And I'm sure that there'll be more questions coming your way at the end. I saw some questions in the Zoom feed, but also there are about 100 people on our YouTube feed looking at this event. So I'm sure there'll be questions coming. Our next presenter is actually, I'm very excited about the next one because it's probably going to make us laugh. And the next presenter is Praveen Sinha, and he's an interaction designer, and he's also an educator and new media practitioner, and his work is sort of lies between code and storytelling. And today the work that he's sharing today is about the Indian nod and haiku. And it's really interesting how you've kind of been able to put both of them together in a project. Over to you, Praveen. Make us laugh now.
Okay, so we'll start it with a laugh actually. Okay, so guys, I will start showing you what I made actually for this presentation. So I'll just stop the video. Is my feed visible?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Spark AR interfaces.
Yeah, so this is the Spark AR interface, and I made a AR filter for Instagram actually, which writes haiku when you tilt your head like this. Okay, so that was the concept which I came up with when I got the introduction to CoPro Jam. So I'll tell you like how I got to this point, right, over experimenting with different stuff. So I call it leaning haiku actually. So what happens is like you lean your head and you get your haiku. That's the basic concept. And from haiku, I'll start. Okay, I got introduced to haikus very early on because I'm very avid fan of animes and manga. So I used to read these haiku poetry. And from that, I got into a game early on. I think in college days, I used to play this game, which was called Haiku Jams. So the lovely thing about this app was it's like you write a 3-line haiku, but every line is written by some stranger from around the world or from another user. So for me, this was another level. The first time I got introduced to generative text, which was a very natural form of generative creativity, right? And after that, what happened like 3 years back, I was in Pune teaching, and what I used to do is I used to just stroll the cities, and I used to click these photos and just write haikus over it. So I used to call them city haikus. So something like this was there. where I was just sitting on a station and I'll write a haiku by clicking photos, and that was it. Like all of these haikus were, I was just posting on Instagram. So for me, haikus were not just restricted in the structure, because I think I observed something and I wrote haiku as per myself. Right. And then recently, like this year, I have been experimenting with AR. Right. So this is some weird things I have been making. So I thought, okay, why not try to interpret haikus with ARs, right? Because haiku is poetry, and AR is sort of connecting physicality with a virtual world. So I thought it will be very nice to have the combination of AR, physical bodies, and code. So I used the body motion, which was the head, and I used Spark AR as a medium to get a haiku. Okay, and the thing with body motion was I'm just fascinated by the Indian nod, right? Because it can be interpreted in so many different ways, like yes, no, don't know. So I thought that I'll take this interaction and I'll code it in my AR program. So like when you do the Indian nod, you get a poetry, because it's like a meta that the action is a poetry in itself, and you get another form of poetry from it. And while doing this, the first step was to generate haiku, which is legible. So as you can see in the GIF here, like woof bark, woofy bark, rough bark, barky woof. So it sometimes makes sense. It sometimes doesn't make sense, as you have seen in Jazel's work also. So I chose the simple format of a haiku. So it's like the first line is referring to an observation from nature, and the second line is connected with human emotions, which you can feel, and the third one is like a philosophical truth. And I think when I released the AR filter, most of the people were doing the normal head nod, left, right, left, right, left, right. But I thought of introduced a Easter egg, which I didn't tell anybody, that if you do more left nods, you will get a sad vibe haiku. And if you do a more right nods, you will get a joyful haiku. So I'll just show you guys like how I approach. So when I do this, right, can you see on this part, the left and right ticks get highlighted? So I just take them, and I get a simple random value through these already populated arrays. So I wrote all these lines to figure out what type of different things we could be doing with haikus, right? And for me, the best thing was when I published this haiku, right? So people started. I'll just finish this. Okay, or maybe. Right. So it's like this. Like every time something comes up, it people just find it relevant to their own situation somehow, maybe. So I got like a lot of responses on what do you say, Instagram, and so I'll show you a few of those what I got. So I think Ambika here also started with exploring this, and somehow it got glitchy, right? It got layered, and that was another fun part for me, because like it's like people are hacking these filters in itself. So I'll show you another one. So somebody, instead of using their own face, they used their passport photos and they created a haiku. Right? And some people also layered the haiku on my own filter. So it's like fading the sun and night of the full moon. So it was very interesting that even on a layering phase, I was getting contradictory haikus. And some people started taking philosophers and started creating their own haikus over their faces, right? So I thought that it's very interesting. People have experimented with even something like Shami Kapoor's video. So for me, these type of interactions are the part of fun when I'm trying to make such haikus, essentially. So if you guys want to try it out, you can check it out here. I guess I'll just, you can take a picture for now, and I will share this later on with everybody in the emails. Agar, I think that will be all from my side. I
Thanks,
just stop the sharing.
Thank you, Praveen. And yeah, so how many people do you think have downloaded this filter, and how many haikus have been made? Do you have any idea?
So from the like stats I got, I saw it only like for 2 days, when I launched it. So it reached around 3,500 people were interacting with it. So
Wow.
I was also surprised because I generally didn't expect this much interaction on the filter.
Nice, cool. So so thanks, Praveen, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you, and we'll get to those in the end. I want to also tell everybody that all the work whoever's presenting, we will share all of these links with everybody over an email after the event. So if you've missed out on somebody's links, etc., don't worry, we'll send them across to you. Our next presenter is Akash, who's also known as Sound Codes. He's an experimental artist exploring electroacoustic improvisation, data manipulation, algorithmic compositions, and sensor-based music. And today, the project he's going to share with us, in fact, is something that he made during the lockdown. It's called Phantom Words. And it's actually I feel it's a project with magic in it. I feel that it's a really interesting project, and it's got some elements of sort of auditory illusions, and I think this project is going to really blow our mind. So Akash, if you're there.
Yes. Hello. Thank you.
Yes.
I cannot switch on my video.
You cannot.
It says you cannot start your video because the host. Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
Hello. Hi, Akash. Go for it.
Cool. So I essentially do like 3 kinds of work. Like I generally, the vibe is like in arts, education, or in like commercial projects. Most of people like call us or relate to us in a sense of like creative coders or creative technologists. But for this evening, we can consider ourselves as like augmented poets who are taking like this medium or augmenting it beyond like a piece of paper. Uh, like unconventional usage of language or like the creative usage of languages where like normally the poetry starts. Similarly, the creative use of the codes is also where I think like this sort of code poem jam starts. Like a short description of the and auditory illusion. So, in simple words, phantom words are sounds which are specifically designed so that they don't have any word or meaning attached to them. It's essentially a noise. But when we hear them, our brain gives meaning to these sounds and we hear words. This illusion is gives insight to somewhat kind of a general feeling or the emotion we as a listener are having at that point of time. So essentially when we play these sounds and we had an awesome meal, so we think about like the words we hear are somewhat correlating to the idea of food and so on. I'll share my screen. Yes. So I did this experiment on, so this started as like a tiny course I designed for story of, like it was in general more related to psychoacoustics and perception of sound. So after that course, I got like feedback, and quite a few friends asked me to continue this specific thing, like phantom words. So I thought, like in a lockdown, and this is like quite a unique time in for all of us. Like entire world like locked inside, entire world is shut. So we all went through like crazy amount of emotional changes or like perceptional changes. So I did this for 10 days during the lockdown. And initially, the idea was to somehow like get like sentiment or like the emotional data of what people are contributing. Uh, but while plotting them, I realized that I cannot eliminate the insane amount of bias I have present with the data, like the way I'm interpreting the data. So I thought, let's leave it and like just focus on the words and how can we lock the words. So I'll play a sound. This is so here essentially we heard the first three blocks, like the day one, day two, and day three, and the type size this is based on the number of people submitted that word. So 5 in the first cube would be like submitted by a lot of people compared to people who sent space or fire. Same thing when the second block, like Mike, wait, fight, make, find is given by contributed by quite a lot of people compared to like society, file, wing, and so on. The building, the background of Phantom Words, it's quite easy to make. Like you can use like a software or like anything. Even a audio editing software would be great. So the basic idea is uh, basic idea is like you take a syllable, put it in the left, take another syllable, put it on the right, drift both the syllables uh, by a very tiny amount, and loop it. You have phantom words. That's it, I think.
So Akash, yeah. So the word 5 is actually not there in that sound, is it?
No, it has no sound. It has no words. It's just a syllable looped constantly.
This is so interesting. This is so I couldn't believe it. I thought that when I heard your phantom words when you had first shared it with us, and I really it, even if I tried to convince myself that 5 wasn't there, it was very difficult for me to imagine that 5 wasn't there. But I have to trust you that 5 wasn't there. So
No,
I think thanks a
it's
lot.
nonsense. Like the sound file in itself is nonsense. It has absolutely no word, no meaning. It's just like here it's more deeper. Like the auditory cortex, what we have here, like it has a primary function of rejecting sound, and whenever and our brain likes to make meaning, make patterns of things, and this sort of nonsense because it has like characteristics of syllables involved into it. So our mind is just giving us words. So yeah.
Very nice. So it's also possible that if I hear the same sound, which is what you said, if I hear the same sound again, I'll find something else in it. I think.
Can you repeat it again,
Yeah, I
please?
said that is it possible that if I hear the same phantom words again, I will hear something else altogether?
Most probably, like if you hear the same sample in the morning, the perception is different than what you hear in the evening.
Damn interesting. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Akash. And
Thank you.
We'll move to our next presenter and the final one for the evening. So our final presenter today evening is Kofi Oduro. And he's a creative coder and a performative programmer who uses code, poetry, music, visuals in conjunction with other mediums to enhance experiences. And today he's done something special for Draft, and he's using sort of live coding tools alongside poetry to show that code is poetry and poetry is code. And code is poetry, poetry is code is actually what CopoJam believes, and that is where our inquiry started. So yeah, great. Kofi, over to you. Kofi, you have to
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody. So today you're going to get a performance mixed with some audio visuals, just to showcase that code is another form of writing. And the reason why I do all of this experience is to show that depending on the visuals, on the sound you hear, it might affect how you feel. So hope you enjoy the show. Hold up 1 second. I think I actually might have forgotten to share computer sound. All right, there. As the words whisper, their tenderness stays crisper. These words that are just flowing on the top of my head are words that come up from the mind as if they were just from bed. The time difference may be a lot, but the way the poetry flows and weaves within the code, it does say a lot. It does say a lot, as sometimes our thoughts are just words that are fought as they battle, and sometimes we don't know how they linger. But sometimes it's just the flick of switching with just a finger. Because code is poetry. Poetry is code. Sometimes it's hot. Sometimes it's cold. Sometimes it makes no sense. And sometimes it has the ability to put you in success. And sometimes as the visuals just keep flowing and you don't even know, as in Canada, as you know, sometimes the days just keeps on snowing. But for this, it's not a bad thing, as all good things sometimes have an opposite fling that leads you to just leave your mind on a road that leads you to sing. And sometimes we just wonder, and sometimes we just flunder. Sometimes the colors that we change are just an imagination range. Sometimes we don't know what changes. Sometimes we don't know what changes. And sometimes we don't know. But we go on the pace. We look at the sky. We look at outer space. We look at the stars, wondering, can we ever travel this far? And these are just some of the words. These are just some of the motions. These are just some of the emotions that get evoked, that get emote, that go like a ship that is trying to float. For sometimes our mind can grow like Jack and the Beanstalk, putting on the motions, putting on the tenders, putting on these thoughts as we end up to the walk. And if you want to enhance this experience that you're currently listening to, you can add some words in the chat and I will try to bring them true in the mood. And sometimes we don't know the hue. Like you see this orange, maybe I might be able to change it to blue. For what you think is what you are. And what you are It's another star, another being that sometimes you get the delight. Maybe you just gotta close your eyes and listen to the beats in the background, or sometimes you look at the lights and see how they mingle with the sound. Or maybe you're just wondering how the clovers are looking as they're going around. For this is code, for this is poetry, this is both. So what is the flow? Does it go upstream? Does it keep it clean? Are you able to visualize what you see on the screen? Does it make sense? Does it make you tense? Does it get you going? Does it get you flowing? Does it get you thinking? Does it make you slow? Does it make you happy? Does it make you mad? Or do tears come out of your eyes wondering why you're sad? Should I add a different beat? Should I add a different tempo? Should I make this another show? Or just remind you of your TV episodes? For this is what happens when you freestyle on the top of your head. You don't know what directions may come. You don't know what directions may run. It can get all over the place. It can go all over the space. It can make you wonder. It can make you candor. It can make you wondering if what you're seeing even's gonna flow well. As I just change these numbers, making sure they just don't hinder, making sure they just don't linger, making sure they just don't sprinkle as they go in the batter, getting a bit of splatter. I might just have to stop to make this all make sense in the matter, as I just reverse the sense of time, as I just go with the rhyme and saying lyrics that are just flowing from the top of my mind. So I'm gonna end it for now, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed this show, because poetry is code, code is poetry, and all the time they flow. Yeah, I don't know if you could, yeah, so that's just a bit, yeah.
Super cool. Thanks, Kofi. I think it was
no problem.
amazing. I'll just start my video. I'm very curious. So what are you using? Are you using, I could see some Hydra in there, but
Yes.
what else is there?
Oh, what else is there is Sonic Pi.
Okay.
Sonic Pi is based off Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of live coding languages, but what I like about Sonic Pi, I can like change samples, I can read my code.
Mm-hmm.
And how this came about is that I always wanted to rap on my own beat, like freestyle on a code. And I'm like, oh, poetry and music goes well. But I realized that sometimes I needed time to like let people soak it in. So then I realized that with Hydra, if I mixed all three of them together, it gives people another dimension, because now your brain is not only thinking mentally, but you're also thinking emotionally, because you know the way the colors, the speed, like I'm giving more to the poetry. So every time I change a word or change the code, you have a word associated. So it's almost like an sensational poem, you know, like a poem that touches all the senses.
Yeah, right. I think that Hydra does add a lot, and it kind of very immediately we kind of lose ourselves in the poetry, and kind of we are immersed in the experience. I think it was really interesting, and I had never seen anything like this before. So so thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So Kofi, so we would now take, we have about 5 or 7 minutes. We now take some questions. So I have some question actually for, we've kind of compiled all the questions and I have them here with me. I want to start with a question for Akash. Akash, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, we have a question that for you that can, I'll read the question the way it was sort of sent to us, that is there an application of phantom words to identify biases or contexts for people? In the sense, I mean, if I'm trying to understand the question, that how I interpret a certain phantom sound, does it tell you something more about me?
So we can consider this as a Rorschach test of, like, Rorschach test is visual, phantom words are oral. So in itself, they don't hold much data, but unless and until you further investigate, like if you know the grounding from where this word is coming or why this word is coming or some sort of a background of the individual, yes, then they do give you some greater insight. So if you know a person well and you play a sound file for that individual, it would give you some insight. But if it's done randomly on the internet, not necessarily, unless and until you take a additional step of reaching out to the individual, asking what was the feeling, what was the day like, and these sort of. So yes.
And do you think that, I mean, I'm also curious that the syllables that you put in were English, Roman?
No, not really. So
Then?
first 5 days, I essentially had fun by these meme videos. I took some ridiculous meme videos and I chopped them. They were Hindi, English, and like one was like a French parody.
Oh.
So like if you see the original video, it's really ridiculous. It's funny and ridiculous.
So thanks, Akash. It was wonderful. Jazer, we have a question for you as well, and it's about I think it's about how in one of the modes, how does when you select a word, does it influence the next word in any way?
Okay. Yeah, so what's happening there is the word that you're selecting, the computer takes it, it sees what grammar it belongs to. For example, you selected a noun. Then it takes that word, it goes back to this this huge corpus of Robert Frost poetry, and it sees that in that poetry piece, what follows a noun mostly. So it got, okay, the noun is mostly followed by a determiner. So then it comes back and picks a determiner from this. So it's referring back to this poetry text, trying to see the word you selected, what can come next, what is the best possibility. It comes back and selects it. Yeah.
In one of the modes where you work with the bot and the bot kind of suggests to you that choose maybe one of these three words it highlights. If you select another word in that, then what happens? Not one that was suggested by the bot.
You can totally do that. And that is, I think, what feels nice, because like this aspect of suggestiveness, it's more gentle.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely go ahead and do that.
Cool. So I'm definitely waiting to explore this when it goes live on the internet. The next question is for Preeti. Preeti, the question is, and let me, have you considered using the script in which it was originally, the poem originally written? Have you considered using that for the project, or why did you choose the script that you have instead?
Right. I'm so glad this question was asked. So yes, in fact, my first attempt was to try Devanagari because this is a Sanskrit piece. But unfortunately, so I have only experience with P5, and P5 wasn't very supportive with the keyboard engine and, using an index script. So their support was only for Latin. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I'm sort of transitioning to open frameworks right now, just to be able to create this project again with an index script. So that's totally the idea.
Okay, cool. I want to, there's a question that Suvani has for all of us actually, and that I think this is something that she's kind of putting it in context of Kofi's performance. But so whoever wants to answer this can go ahead. So the question is also on our Zoom chat panel. I'm reading it out for you guys now. Hold on, let me just go there. Yeah, Kofi's performance makes me really curious about how one can computationally think of and render the poetic meter, rhythm, and sonic patterns in code-generated poetry. So I think what she's asking is that how concepts such as poetic meter, rhythm, and sonic can be interpreted in the context of computational work. And if anybody has any ideas or thoughts on this, please go ahead.
Yes. So the question is, how can one think The thing I think that we always forget sometimes is that poetry, music is very rhythmic in nature. What, like, I remember I learned something about Euclidean rhythms is where all the music that we all listen to, no matter where you're from, always has a certain pattern that makes it identifiable. So if you're listening to rock music, it has a heavy cadence, 3/5. So like on, if you listen to jazz, if you listen to music in movies, they all follow a different pattern. And sometimes we forget that humans, we naturally do routines which can be related to what you call it, can be related to routines, related to equations, right? When you wake up in the morning, you do your own program. You brush your teeth, you eat some food, we eat breakfast. That can be translated into code. So that's why in my pieces, I like to bring so many different elements to make people realize that, okay, code is not that scary. Code is just another extension of my thoughts.
Cool, interesting. So I'm curious about two things that I want to ask everybody and not let this opportunity go. One of them is about learning to code, and a lot of us feel that there is there's sort of a, it's extremely difficult, and it's something very, very difficult to do. But do you have any suggestions for those who are right now poets and want to probably cross over into computation, or people who are interested in coding, and any thoughts on how you guys started, or what should be the smallest first step in that direction? Anyone? Maybe Praveen, you can take it up, because you have, you also have some connection with education.
Yeah, so like, I was going to say that since I was a coder initially, like I was in computer science engineers, for me, coding was very natural. And the thing was that to get into poetry was a challenge for me. Like I was coming from the opposite end, right? And from what I understood is like people should not get, when you're trying to get from poetry to coding, right? It's just like what Kofi said, it's just an extension. And even if it's simple stuff, and if you start coding in the format of algorithms, even like basic steps, just like I told you, like in the Haiku Jam game, people were just writing 3 lines, and all the 3 people were of different places. So it's like it's an algorithm, and that's how I understood to bring people like or non-coders into coding. Like first start writing basic steps, and if you can understand or connect poetry with those steps, then you will be easily shift to any type of coding which you learn. Like even basic something like even Spark AR is very basic, so even you can start with similar things.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Praveen. So the other question I have sort of going on in my mind while we were planning Copo Jam and while we were thinking about draft is that how can we create more sort of inclusive communities around technology and culture? And we've got some ideas, and I think what draft is going to do in the future is make an attempt at it. But do you guys have any suggestions on how can we involve more and more people and diversify our audience and also the creators around in this scene? Yeah.
I think it's doing stuff like this because I think things like this, it shows the range of what is possible through code and poetry. Like a lot of even though I do code and poetry, there's a lot of stuff that I seen that I'm like, oh, that's cool. I can incorporate it. And I think showing people that stuff that you normally do can be put into both art and tech, because these are two industries that people tend to say, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be a coder. I don't know if I'm creative to be an artist. But sometimes it's just as simple as pressing numbers, playing around. And I think just to show people that there is fun and play can evoke people to, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to try.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. I think that today's presentations were actually very encouraging, and the diversity and the range that we saw today was very inspiring, and I'm sure there was something for everyone in it, and a lot of us will probably become code poets after this, and I hope that happens. I'm going to now hand it over to Ambika. Ambika, are you there?
Of course, I'm there. I'm right behind you. Yeah, I just wanted to first request everybody to switch their cameras on, all the presenters, so everyone can see presented. Kofi, your camera wasn't on. Is it that you're not connected?
Oh no, it's like I'm in like an awkward like scenario because it's like 10 a.m. here.
My mom's also there. She's not a presenter, but she switched her camera on still. Okay, so we'll just quickly give a thanks to all of you who came through for us, and you know, it's an unprecedented number. We were just thinking it'll be 20 of us, but as I can see, we were like almost 769 on YouTube, and I think about 20 people in attendance on Zoom. So it's far exceeded what we were thinking. So thank you for joining us for this most unusual experiment, our first draft. A special thanks to our presenters, Hugo, Jazzer, Preeti, Praveen, Kofi, Akash, all of them. I know Akash is a little bit unwell, but he still made it. And Hasgeek, of course, for supporting and hosting. A lot of moral support. Zainab, Amur, Karthik, Nikhil for connecting us to Hasgeek. Prakriti for her design inputs. Pooja and Ravisha, who've juggled all the chats and have made all the Q&A sessions so seamless, and also my virtual hand holders when I'm freaking out. And as a follow-up to this event, we will be sharing an email with all the links of the artists' works, ways to connect with the community and to learn more about computational poetics and art and text. Please share your feedback with us on email. We will be hosting a small meetup on the 23rd. It's not going to be so elaborate. It will probably be something a little more informal. If you want to know more on that, you can be part of our growing Facebook community called Drafting Draft. So connect with us. We're available on Instagram. You've seen our handles mostly, and join us in this fun and exciting new thing that we are trying out. And see you guys, and we're in the same house, by the way. So thank you everyone. Thanks again, Hasgeek, mostly.
Super, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.